So it is my privilege to introduce to you the gentleman who will introduce the governor. Our Secretary of Natural Resources, Matt Strickler, who has taken a real interest in these sea level rise and coastal resilience issues, and we're very pleased that he could be here today to join us. So with no further ado, Secretary Strickler.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that introduction. I'm Matt Strickler, Secretary of Natural Resources to Governor Northam, and thanks everybody for having us here today. Special thanks, obviously, to the Virginia Coastal Policy Center for all the work that you all do. As a graduate of the College of William & Mary and the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, I know how much good work goes on here, and I'm incredibly grateful for all of the support that you give my staff and me as we strive to make sound policy decisions. I want to give a special shout out, to Carl Hirschner and his team from the VIM Center for Coastal Resources Management. Carl, are you out there today? Anybody from CCRM? There he is. I see you. Thanks for all the support that you all give us, and also for putting up with me being a mediocre student long enough to give me a marine science degree. I really appreciate that. My role here today is just to introduce the governor, but let me just share a couple of thoughts with you before I do that. Global climate change and its related impacts are the biggest problems that we face today as a society, and looking into the future. If we damage our planet so severely that it's no longer able to support life as we know it, nothing else that we do really matters. Governor Northam and I understand that, and we understand the threats that are posed by climate change, and we're doing our best to ensure that Virginia does its part to help avoid the worst impacts. We're continuing Virginia's commitment to the Paris Agreement. We're finalizing a regulation to cut carbon pollution from fossil fuel-fired power plants by 30% over the next decade, and starting a process to limit fugitive methane emissions. We're tackling pollution in the transportation sector by joining the Transportation and Climate Initiative, building the backbone of our electric vehicle charging network, and spending millions of dollars to replace diesel-powered buses with electric ones. And we've secured commitments to bring 5,000 megawatts of wind and solar online in the next decade, and to get more than $1 billion in energy efficiency investments from Virginia's major electric utilities in the same time frame. Unfortunately, some impacts of climate change are already happening, as you know all too well, and others are baked in because of additional carbon emissions that will happen as we transition to a clean energy economy. Many of those impacts are going to be felt most acutely in coastal areas. And that's why the work that all of you all are doing to develop science and strategies that will make our coastal communities more resilient to climate change is so important. We're all very fortunate to have a governor who understands the urgency of this moment and is willing to not only talk openly about these challenges, but also take decisive action to address them head on. And now to tell you more about how we plan to do that, it's my privilege to introduce to you the 73rd Governor of Virginia, His Excellency Ralph Northam.
Thank you all. Please sit down. Well, good afternoon, Matt. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. And just a couple words about Matt Strickler. Matt was my aide way back when I was in the Senate. I served in the Senate of Virginia for 6 years, and he's well-trained, obviously, coming here from the College of William & Mary, and just did great work as my aide, and then has done some work, as you know, in policy up in Washington, D.C., but we are just so privileged to have him back. And he inherited a few things on your plate when you started off, and it has not been easy work, but he has done it with grace and style and professionalism. So, Matt, thank you very much for all you do for Virginia. It is always good to be here back on the campus of William & Mary, and for those of you that haven't heard me say this before, our son, Wes, actually graduated in 2010. He wasn't, I don't think, an environmental student, but a neuroscience major, and has gone on to medical school, and then is now down in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, in his 5th of 7 years of neurosurgery training. So I appreciate all that he was exposed to here at William & Mary and the education that he received. And people ask me often, we have a daughter as well, Aubrey, who went to UVA, but people ask me how our children are doing. They're 30 and 27, and I said they're both employed, so that's a good thing. I'd like to offer special thanks to Elizabeth Andrews and the Coastal Policy Center for hosting this important summit. I know you heard from some legislators, and as I look around the room and as I walked through this just a little bit ago, I saw some of them. But to all of the individuals here that are in elected office, I thank you all for your service to the Commonwealth. As we say, David, it is not the easiest time to be an elected official, but I truly believe with the challenges that we have not only here in Virginia, but in this country, this is the most important time. So for those of you that serve the public, I thank you for your service. My wife, Pam, as you probably know, I see a lot of friendly faces in here, work for the nonprofit environmental group Lynn Haven River Now. She and I have both participated in this summit over the past years, and along with you are advocates for a healthy and resilient environment. I see many of the same friendly faces, and so one of the reasons I wanted to come today was to thank all of you for being here and being a part of the solution. While the challenges we face are daunting, I am excited for the opportunities we have to work together and put ideas into practice. As many of you may know, I grew up on the Eastern Shore, and I know how much people living in rural coastal areas depend on the water and how much they respect and fear it when conditions turn dangerous. Hurricanes Florence and Michael were recent reminders. Just yesterday, I was in Danville, touring some of the damaged sites there. And as I said to the media that were there, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but there is just tremendous damage there from floodwaters. And so I think we always have to keep in mind when we talk about coastal flooding and resiliency, we often think of the coast, but all areas of the Commonwealth of Virginia are certainly vulnerable. I've seen firsthand the changes that have happened as our sea level has risen and land has subsided. It is a stark reminder of how fragile that balance is. I've lived most of my adult life in Norfolk and Virginia Beach. I'm acutely aware of the challenges that waterfront cities face. It can be very difficult and expensive to address flooding, storm surge, and the extreme weather that has become more frequent. But whether you live in an urban neighborhood in Hampton Roads, Danville, or on a farm overlooking the Chesapeake Bay, two things hold true. First, these problems are not going away. And second, unless we take decisive action, they will only continue to get worse. Sea level rise, land subsidence, rising average temperatures, more frequent and intense weather events, severe drought, and increased development. All of these are increasing the risk from natural hazards across the Commonwealth. In the past 20 years, Virginia has seen a 250% increase in federally declared disasters. Scientists tell us this trend will continue to worsen. Water levels in the Hampton Roads region, for example, are now 18 inches higher than they were a century ago and continuing to rise. The relative rate of change in Hampton Roads is faster than anywhere else on the East Coast. I remind people also, I used to work on Tangier Island. When I was in high school, I helped to build the airstrip. If you knew Tangier in the late 70s, 1970s, and now see it, you will see exactly what subsidence and sea level rise are doing. If you come to our house in Onancock, on Onancock Creek, just when Hurricane Michael went through a couple weeks ago, we had a foot of water in our garage. We didn't used to see that. So the times, as we say, are changing. Reports show we're seeing stronger and more frequent North Atlantic hurricanes. While we were fortunate that Virginia didn't bear the worst of Hurricanes Florence and Michael, at least for some folks, we still experience tragic loss of life and property. It is only a matter of time before the next storm hits. While rising tides and extreme weather events endanger public safety, they also have a dramatic impact on the livelihoods and economic viability of coastal Virginia. Our critical port infrastructure is at risk, as are the military installations that define the social and economic character of Hampton Roads. Joint Base Langley, Eustis, and Naval Air Station Oceana Dam Neck Annex could lose 75 to 95% of their land by the end of this century. As sea levels in the region rise, the Norfolk Naval Station will also be at risk. We must work with the military to protect these bases and the economies they support. In addition to the loss of property and cherished places in Virginia, this will have a dramatic impact on our state's economy. For most Virginians, their home is their biggest investment, but those homes' values are hurt by recurrent flooding. Since 2005, Virginians have lost $280 million in home value due to flooding related to sea level rise. And as property values decline, local tax bases will suffer. This impacts credit ratings and our ability to attract new businesses to the Commonwealth and to keep our existing economy strong. Without a thoughtful approach to coastal protection, we will lose many of the natural features that make Virginia such a special place to live. Rising seas and encroaching development will squeeze out critical coastal barriers like marshes, dunes, and riparian forest. These serve as habitat for fish and wildlife, as well as filters for water entering our Chesapeake Bay. We are fortunate that the Coastal Policy Center, along with many groups and individuals, is focused on addressing these threats to public safety and economic prosperity. But they cannot do it alone. With so much at risk, we must act now, and we must act boldly. That is why today I'm ordering my administration to act to address sea level rise, extreme weather, and climate impacts on our state. In a moment, I will sign Executive Order 24, a comprehensive directive that will set the Commonwealth of Virginia on a path towards resilience to natural catastrophes. This executive order to increase Virginia's resilience to sea level rise and natural hazards will serve as a roadmap to make Virginia's built environment more resilient to floods, hurricanes, fires, and other extreme weather events. The order directs the Commonwealth Secretary of Natural Resources, Matt Strickler. I don't know if you knew that, Matt, but just one more little thing on your plate. To ensure that our state buildings are protected from sea level rise and future extreme weather. We will set internal standards for sea level rise scenario projections and conduct regular reviews of Commonwealth assets to gauge their risk and improve their resilience. Strengthening our own structures will protect taxpayer interest and set an example for property owners, communities, and local governments. The order also calls for the creation of a Virginia Coastal Resilience Master Plan. I recently named a Special Assistant for Coastal Adaptation and Protection, retired Rear Admiral Ann Phillips. I know Ann is with us, and Ann, thank you for taking on this task. I appreciate your service to the Commonwealth. With her help, we will create a comprehensive plan for protecting our coastal areas from sea level rise, recurrent flooding, and extreme weather. We will use the best available science and engineering to coordinate green, gray, and blue infrastructure projects, marsh and wetland restoration, natural and nature-based infrastructure, engineered solutions, and other smart development to protect our communities. Finally, the order will encourage increased risk communication, community-scale mitigation and adaptation, engagement with our many federal partners, and the use of new technologies to address risk. Coastal adaptation and protection is a serious and expanding challenge that needs bold solutions. The executive order I'm signing today will set us on a path towards resilience, but it will not solve every problem. To truly make Virginia resilient, we must have a comprehensive and collaborative approach. We will engage the federal government, localities, businesses, nonprofits, and most of all, citizens. Without the committed work of those across the whole of government and society, we will not solve this problem. Virginia will lead, but we will need your help. Finally, we understand that this plan will be costly. Flood control projects and land conservation are expensive, but so is property damage and loss. As Ben Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We will certainly seek federal support, but to start making progress, we must dedicate state resources. I look forward to working with the General Assembly during the upcoming session to make a significant down payment on this project by investing in our planning effort and setting aside funds for resilience-related projects. I will propose legislation to dedicate the revenue generated by our carbon pollution reduction rule to adaptive infrastructure. Instead of sending tens of millions of dollars back to the companies creating the pollution, we should set those funds aside to address the cost to society of carbon pollution. That's how the market is supposed to work, and it's our best chance to begin tackling these problems in a meaningful way. Sea level rise, natural hazards, and climate change represent a generational threat that will only be solved by facing our challenges head on and driving bold solutions. The executive order I will sign today will set us on a path toward our collective future of resilience. It will engage a whole government approach to protecting our state and our economic livelihood, and it will signal to the rest of the world that Virginia understands what's at stake and is up to the task. With your help, we will have a safe and resilient Commonwealth. So in closing, I thank all of you for being here today. As you've heard us say before, this is a team effort. It takes a village, and I certainly appreciate all of you being part of that village. At the end of the day, I don't know about you, and I suspect we have some folks visiting from other states, but I'm a bit biased, and I believe we live in the best Commonwealth, in the best country in the world, and all we're trying to do at the end of the day is make Virginia a state where people will want to come and work and raise their families and enjoy our wonderful quality of life. So thank you all so much for being with us today, and thank you to William and Mary for their generous hospitality. Thank you so much. This is Executive Order number 24, which I hopefully was just able to describe. And actually, since she's a newcomer to William and Mary, I'm going to give this to our president, President Rowe. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Yes, sir.
y'all.
Talk about a hard act to follow. That was amazing. And thank you again for being here today. It was a wonderful conference.